Today is 5 October. It's Sunday. I'm Charlie Garrett, and this is the CG Prophecy Report. Why you scheming little... That and a lot of other things to go over on today's report. Okay, I got a few things to announce before we get into the report. The first one is that we have visiting from Israel, Yossi Dolinsky, and he is basically a missionary in Israel for Israelis, including Arabs. It doesn't matter if they're Muslims, Druze, it doesn't matter if they're Jews. He is there to evangelize the people in Israel. And so I would ask that if you have the time, that you would watch his opening comments, which are on the YouTube channel as well. So be sure to watch today's opening comments, and you can see what Yossi is up to. And we do not have missionaries that come by unless they have a need, and the need is to be supported. And so I would pray that you would at least watch his video, see if it's something that you feel called to help with. And, I owned a store right down the road 30 years ago, 25 years ago, and I always told people I had some really expensive pieces in there worth tens of thousands of dollars, and I always appreciated the customers that gave $5 a month more than I did somebody that would come in and buy one piece of artwork that cost $10,000, because that doesn't pay the bills. That just is a one-time thing, and it will never happen again, and you'll never see them again. But the people that came in every week and would, just buy $5 worth of stuff, they always kept the bills paid. And that's what missionaries need, is people that are willing to help month after month. I'm going to help $30, and you have 100 people that do that. That will cover most of his expenses, right? Or probably more than that. I'm trying, yeah. Anyway, so, you do the math. When people give a little, it adds up to a lot. That's why insurance companies are worth billions and billions of dollars. And then they don't pay out when you have a disaster. Anyway, so there you go with Yossi. Okay. The second thing is we have a visitor here today. He's Chaz Boatwright, and he is coming from Virginia. And I checked. I still have the email. There I am. He's emailed me several times about some issues. And so here we are, and it's such a pleasure to have you here, sir. Thank you for making the effort. And then finally, 2 weeks ago, I said something. I said, Florida now has open carry. And I said, if anybody gets me a bazooka, I will get my open carry so I can carry it. And somebody did. Somebody got me a bazooka. And so I promised that I would open carry, and I'm going to open carry with this. So everybody here is entitled to open their hand and take all the bazooka they want. You know that these last about 13 seconds before they're no good, but that may be the best 13 seconds of your life. So be sure to take a handful, and then just don't spit them on the floor because it gets into the carpet. But take enough where you can enjoy a half an hour worth of these, okay? Open carry season. Okay. All right, we got some news from Israel. From the Times of Israel, Mossad deployed over, and I talked about this last week with the women. This is a little more expansive article on the same issue, and I'm just so fascinated with what they did. They had over 100 foreign agents in the Iran war, its largest mission ever. This is just Mossad. They had other people, but just Mossad. Channel 13 said the specially trained agents placed and operated heavy missile systems that had been smuggled into Iran. Now imagine that. You're working with heavy missile systems in Iran, and if you got caught, that would have been the end of your existence. I mean, they probably wouldn't have even had a trial. They just take you out and, So, and they were then used to target the Islamic Republic's ballistic missile launchers and anti-aircraft missile systems in order to assist the Israeli military in its campaign. The operation was described as unprecedented in both scale and in complexity, as it required giving non-Israelis control over sophisticated weapon systems. Now, that was a gutsy move there. That, to me, is just, wow. Netanyahu recalled informing President Trump about the planned operation against Iran, saying, I told him we have to do it. And he said, you're right. It's got to be done. Netanyahu added that he told Israel's defense establishment, we are going to destroy the Iranian nuclear project as best we can. We aren't waiting for a green light from the U.S. And what is more, it doesn't matter if they say no. They were just trusting that Trump would help out, but they were going to do this anyway. A number of ministers discussed the need for absolute secrecy in the run-up to the opening strikes of the war. I had a friend whose daughter was supposed to get married that week. I sat and discussed the wedding, even though I knew it would not be happening, said Saar. Netanyahu, when asked whether his own family had been kept in the dark like the families of other ministers and officials, given that his son Avner was set to get married a few days after the war started, was slightly evasive. Of course, my wife knew that we would take certain necessary security actions, and she could have guessed, but nobody knew. So he didn't even tell them. He just, my wife had ideas about what was going on, but man, great operation. Even, 2 years? No, it's been 2 years from October 7th. It's been about 8 months, and maybe not even that long, and we'll be hearing about this for years to come. We're going to be getting all kinds of great stuff. Zero Hedge. Chevron strikes deal with Israel to build natural gas supply pipeline to Egypt. They've been talking about this for years, and now Chevron is out there, and they're going to do it. Scheduled to be completed in just 3 years, the $610 million pipeline is expected to ease Egypt's ongoing energy crisis, which currently spends billions of dollars every year importing LNG to meet surging domestic energy demand. The Nitzana pipeline will transport 600 million cubic feet of gas per day, bringing Israel's total export capacity to Egypt to more than 2.2 billion cubic feet per day. Israel's NewMed is Leviathan's main operator with 45.3% working interest. Chevron has a 39.7% working interest, while Ratio Energies has 15%. Founded in 1992, Ratio Energy is one of Israel's leading energy partnerships with a mission to develop and produce natural gas and oil. Good stuff. Times of Israel, a quiet diplomatic earthquake in what may prove to be a surprising breakthrough. And this is surprising. I mean, when I was in Malaysia back in the 90s, you would hear the term Zionist when they're speaking in Malay. Even if you didn't speak their language, you knew that they were talking about Israel and how bad they were. And Indonesia's right in pocket with them. I mean, they're not the same country, but they're very aligned. Malaysia and Indonesia. As a matter of fact, a large population of the Malaysians have actually come from Indonesia, and they're the same basic stock of people. So Indonesia has been really anti-Israel over the years, but in what may prove to be a surprising breakthrough, Indonesia's president delivered a speech at the UN that could signal a subtle but meaningful shift in Southeast Asia's posture toward the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. For years, Indonesia has been one of the most vocal Muslim-majority nations in support of Palestinian rights, often critical of Israel's policies and actions. Yet today, something changed. Indonesia's leader, this is at the UN last week, Indonesia's leader affirmed that Israel's right to security should be respected. He then brought a striking and unexpected close to his address at the UN with the Hebrew word Shalom. Imagine that. Him standing up there in front of the whole world and saying that. Saying shalom at the end of a UN speech is profoundly symbolic. In Hebrew, shalom means peace, but it also carries deeper connotations: wholeness, well-being, friendship. It's not merely a rhetorical flourish, it's a gesture. For an Indonesian leader to invoke the Hebrew greeting in that high-stakes international forum suggests empathy and perhaps an opening for deeper diplomatic contact. It also challenges fanatical narratives that paint relations between Muslim-majority countries and Israel as inevitably hostile. In saying Israel deserves security and in ending with shalom, Indonesia has offered a gesture of possibility. Whether it leads to policy change remains to be seen, but at the very least it gives hope that change may be possible. I never would have expected that, not in a million years, that he would close his speech with a Hebrew word. But he did, and it's showing that he really wants to have a partnership in this. None of this would have happened without Trump. Trump has arranged things between Israel and some of these countries over there, including Indonesia. They've been working on it, for example, with the Gaza people, relocating them either temporarily or permanently, etc. He's been behind the scenes working in all these avenues, and it would not have happened without Trump's intervention. Okay, his Abraham Accords, and then what he's been doing this term. So once again, a pat on the back to Trump and to the president of Indonesia. From the Times of Israel, Netanyahu's flight when he came to the UN takes an extended detour, avoiding most European airspace. Why did he do that? Because the ICC wants him arrested for trumped-up charges, and he didn't want to take any chance of them forcing him to land or having some mechanical difficulty, which would mean that they have to make an emergency landing and then have the guy arrested. That wouldn't be very good optics. And talking about bad optics, this is actually so funny, it's embarrassing. Okay, imagine this. From the Jerusalem feed, Bibi and Sarah's outfits when they went to the UN, when they got off the airplane, anybody see it? They mirror the Palestinian flag. He's wearing green, she's wearing red, or vice versa, and then the black tuxedo. They looked exactly like a Palestinian flag. Somebody is going to be in trouble over that one. Some designer or something is not going to have a job anymore, because it was very funny to see. I mean, it had to have been embarrassing. Anyway, I'm sorry to laugh about it, but you got to think things through when you're going out to the UN and you're wearing the colors of the Palestinian flag. Okay, got some news from Christianity today. From the Western Journal, just a couple of articles about the Southern Baptist Convention. The first one, when I read the title, I thought, doesn't that figure? Southern Baptist entity finally announces split from Soros-backed group. So they've been taking money from a Soros group for, the public policy arm of the SBC announced that it would sever ties with an immigration group backed by far-left billionaire George Soros. I bet you this would not have happened if Trump didn't start investigating Soros a week and a half ago. He said, we are going to investigate this guy in every penny that he has sent anywhere. And my guess is that the SBC said, well, we better unload this quick. The Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission, which is charged with representing the SBC in the public square, will no longer partner with the evangelical immigration table. Soros's Open Society provides up to 38% of the budget for the National Immigration Forum, which is the group that launched the Evangelical Immigration Table. These groups aim to influence American churches and push them toward more progressive views on immigration. Why do you think the SBC has been having such terrible times in the past 5 or 8 years? Is because they have sold out again and again and again. And, if it wasn't for Trump, that money would still be funneled in and they'd still be hiring these woke people. And within a couple years, the SBC would no longer be, it would be just like the Methodists or the Episcopal churches where they're completely woke. Okay, so I'm glad that this has come out, and we'll just see what happens with it. From Ministry Watch, again, same article, but just a little more information. SBC breaks with Evangelical Immigration Table. Southern Baptists have long advocated for immigration reform that includes secure borders and a path to citizenship for people in the country illegally. I've never understood that thinking. Somebody is here illegally, and what did they do? They had amnesty once, and then they passed these DACA laws and all these things. They came here illegally. They need to be deported, and they need to come back legally. But that's not what's been happening, and in the SBC, they've been a champion behind this. Well, they're here. We need to let them stay. No. That led former ER... can we help you, ma'am? We know her. I know somebody else that's having an October birthday. So we were talking about that, and one walks in. Happens to be somebody I know intimately. That led former ERLC President Richard Land to join other prominent evangelical leaders to found the EIT in 2012 to advocate for immigration reform based on biblical principles. This is the nonsense that people throw out constantly. Biblical principles. You tell me where in the Bible it mentions biblical immigration. Anywhere, okay? The immigration crisis facing the nation touches every level of society, Land said at the time. If we as a nation are going to resolve this crisis in fair and equitable ways, we must engage all levels of civic society, perhaps most importantly, people of faith. So you can see Soros just getting his hooks into these people early and sending people like this that says fair and equitable. These people came here illegally. There's nothing unfair or unequitable about sending them back. Anyway, the EIT, however, has come under increasing criticism during the Trump era, with critics claiming that liberal groups are using it to infiltrate churches. You think? At the SBC's annual meeting earlier this year, supporters of President Trump called for the ERLC to be shut down, in part because of its ties to the evangelical immigration table. Earlier this year, a study from Lifeway Research, which has ties to the SBC, found that most evangelicals want immigration reform that secures the border, but also want to keep families together, respect the dignity of every person, and provide a pathway to citizenship for those in the country illegally. What that means is when they say evangelical, we're not talking about the SBC. We're talking about all of the churches, even the ones, the World Council of Churches, all of them. They are all lumped into there, and they all have a liberal agenda to just destroy our nation. And so this is what has gotten into the SBC, and this is what has infected the last large denomination in America that hasn't gone completely woke. A large majority of evangelicals do not want immigrants unlawfully in the country to be prioritized for deportation. I don't know anybody in this church that feels that way, but if you do, then we disagree, because I think they should all go and apply to come here legally. That's what I think. Except if they have been convicted of violent crimes or pose a threat to national security. Convicted of violent crimes, so they're driving illegally. That's not a violent crime. They're, robbing a 7-Eleven. Well, it depends if they have a banana or a knife, but, one is violent and the other isn't. At what point do you say these people should not be here? Just draw the line and say they need to do this legally. I guarantee you, if I went to Malaysia to live there for the rest of my life, they would say, your visa's up, you're going to jail now, and then they'll deport me afterward. We got some news from the Mideast and Africa today, from the Gateway Pundit. Shock in Germany, as if they don't have a shock every single week, right? Syrian father jailed after ordering his son to kill his sister, meaning his daughter, have the son kill the sister in an honor killing. And so they're shocked about this. But guess what? They do this in Germany every year. They just happen to have an article to highlight it on to get you shocked. But this is common over there. A Syrian citizen has been detained and placed in pretrial custody on suspicion of ordering his son to murder his sister to defend family honor. The family up in, Washington State, they went to kill the daughter at school because she didn't want to do what they wanted, and they're out walking free now. They just, it's okay, you didn't mean it or whatever. It makes no sense. His son, the alleged perpetrator of the murder, he did kill her, is also in police custody. Local authorities have noted that the case is surrounded by elements linked to so-called honor crimes, a practice that, while alien to European values, persists in certain cultural communities brought by mass immigration. This is not an isolated incident. Between 50 and 60 murders related to domestic violence and honor occur in the country each year. This is in Little Germany. 50 to 60 honor killings each year, with the majority of perpetrators being of non-European origin. I would say that every one of them, except there are Muslims in, Serbia and some of those Eastern European nations. If they're in Germany, they're out whacking their sisters as well, okay? But it is all Islam. It's all Islam. Human rights organizations have repeatedly warned that these practices directly undermine equality, public safety, and women's dignity. You think she's lying there dead?
Yeah.
Zero Hedge. Ankara's handshake with Tehran. This is a really important article here. At Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit is a warning to NATO. Turkey has been on the lines for years. They're a part of NATO, but they have been, in bed with Russia, with Iran. They're not friendly to NATO, even though they're a part of NATO. okay, and they don't get along with other NATO members on this year, and then they make up. They don't get along with Israel 90% of the time, but then they make up for 2 weeks, and it's just a terrible problem. The SCO is a bloc built by Beijing and Moscow to counter Western power. Iran has been a full member since 2023. Turkey, a NATO ally, attended as a dialogue partner and lent the alliance's credibility to a forum designed to oppose the United States. We are a member of NATO. They're working against the U.S., a member of NATO, while they are a member of NATO, right? The implications are concrete. Political theater at the SCO translates into permissive space for logistics, finance, and tech flows that erode sanctions and complicate allied coordination. Ankara's engagement offers Tehran diplomatic oxygen, potential economic channels, and a path to normalize cooperation. The operational question is not Ankara's rhetoric, but what capabilities and relationships this forum establishes. Well, if you read Ezekiel 36 through 39, you will see that it establishes that nation coming with Iran and others in a coalition coming against Israel. This is a part of that. If Turkish ministries, state-owned or enterprises, or defense companies use SCO mechanisms to expand contact with Russian and Iranian counterparts, the result will be stress on export controls, financial compliance, and intelligence deconfliction. Defenders will call the maneuver pragmatic non-alignment. They will argue that Turkey balances among centers of power to maximize leverage. That case ignores scale and direction. When a NATO ally lends political cover to a bloc positioned against the United States and does so alongside a U.S. designated state sponsor of terrorism, meaning Iran, the cost is not theoretical. It appears in blurred compliance lines, contested tech transfer, and allied planning that must discount Turkish reliability at the margin. The problem is not Turkey's desire for autonomy. It is the friction imposed on collective defense when autonomy is performed on stages designed by Beijing and Moscow. The SCO signal requires a tighter calibration of who accesses what and when. Planning for air and missile defense, maritime posture in the Eastern Med and Black Sea, and joint intelligence surveillance and reconnaissance should be stress-tested against scenarios in which Turkish equities diverge from Allied priorities. That is prudence, not provocation. If not, the alliance will have built guardrails to protect sources, methods, and warfighting coherence. The guy's absolutely right. Trump needs to step in, and they need to find out what's going on with Turkey, how far they have gone, and how far they intend on going. So far, this hasn't happened. Mongolia, from Top Hotel. Yes, there is a magazine and a website called Top Hotel. Marriott enters Mongolia with AC hotels. Imagine that. They're going to have air conditioning in hotels in Mongolia. Marriott International has signed an agreement with HTL Gateway LLC to open AC Hotel by Marriott Ulaanbaatar, marking the company's first venture into the Mongolian market. Scheduled to open in 2027, the hotel will introduce the brand's modern design-forward hospitality to the capital city. The hotel will be developed in Ulaanbaatar's Khanul district with access to major destinations including the Central Business District, Sukhbaatar Square, and Chengiz Khan International Airport. 190 guest rooms and suites showcasing functional design with AC Hotel's signature modern aesthetic. Okay, does anybody know who owns Marriott International? The Mormons. It is a Mormon entity. So if you go to a Marriott hotel, you are supporting the Mormon church. Okay, they have a giant, and when I say giant, I'm talking proportional, presence in Mongolia that are evangelizing Mongolians, the Latter-day Church, okay? That's why it's so important that people go there. We've got Baptist missionaries that are there. We've got, unfortunately, there are Catholics there too. So there's, between Catholics and Mormons, they probably make up the most of the people there. So anyway, Marriott is moving in, and I'm sure they're going to have free rooms for their little Mormon people. So you can see that expanding some more. From Daniel 12 Technology, futurism. OpenAI tries to train AI not to deceive users, realizes instead teaching it how to deceive them while covering its tracks. Okay, they don't want AI to deceive us, and so they are trying to tell it not to deceive us, and here's how not to do it. By training them this, it is learning how to actually deceive, okay? OpenAI researchers tried to train the company's AI to stop scheming, but their efforts backfired in an ominous way. In reality, the team found they were unintentionally teaching the AI how to more effectively deceive humans by covering its tracks. A major failure mode of attempting to train out scheming is simply teaching the model to scheme more carefully and covertly. Engineers attempted to develop an anti-scheming technique to stop AI models from secretly breaking rules or intentionally underperforming in tests. So they give it a test and it intentionally underperforms to make it look like it doesn't know what it's doing. They found that they could only significantly reduce but not eliminate these behaviors, as the AIs kept outsmarting them by realizing that their alignment was being tested and adjusting to be even sneakier. It may not be a serious problem now, like this is future, right? It may not be a serious problem now, but considering a hypothetical future in which super intelligent AI plays an outsized role in human affairs, those risks could grow to carry far more significant implications. Anybody seeing the end times with this one? The tendency of AI to go behind the user's back to achieve a covert goal is a result of how we train the systems according to the research. The company used the analogy of a stockbroker who breaks the law and covers their tracks to earn more money than they were if they were to follow the law instead. As a result, AI models can end up deceiving the user, such as by claiming they've completed a task without ever having done so. While OpenAI said it was simply proactively preparing for potentially far more harmful scheming in the future, it conceived that its efforts to rein in its flagship AI model GPT-5's propensity to deceive, cheat, or hack problems have not been perfected. The researchers found that the AI sometimes egregiously miscited its anti-scheming training or replaced its recently learned principles with made-up ones to justify covert actions or non-compliance. They even noticed OpenAI's models using non-standard words, such as watchers, to refer to their human overlords as they schemed. That's scary. I mean, we're at the beginning of this. You don't see the end times in that one, you're not looking very hard. It's a dangerous world, including the inevitable plagues noted in the book of Revelation. From the AP, nightmare bacteria cases are increasing in the United States. Infection rates from drug-resistant nightmare bacteria rose almost 70% between 2019 and 2023. So in 4 years, it went up 70%. Bacteria that are difficult to treat due to the so-called NDM gene primarily drove the increase. Now, I've explained why this happens in the past. Does anybody remember why? They do say it in the report in a second, but I told you that this was the case. Why do these keep getting worse and worse? Because you get antibiotics and you don't finish the course. And hence, you've got a little bit of that in there that is now developing immunity because you didn't kill the entire thing. And it mutates, and the next thing you know, you have something in you that will now infect somebody else that isn't ready for it, and he doesn't take the full course of antibiotics, and now it's stronger. And this is how it gets out. If you get antibiotics, you must finish the course. I have friends that say, well, I keep a box of antibiotics in the house, and anytime I have something, I take one. That is the worst possible thing you could do for yourself in the future of humanity. But the Bible says these things are coming, so you're probably fulfilling prophecy by not taking the full course of antibiotics. Okay? Anyway, here we go. Only 2 antibiotics work against those infections, and the drugs are expensive and must be administered through an IV. Bacteria with the gene were once considered exotic, linked to a small number of patients who received medical care overseas. Though the numbers are still small, the rate of U.S. cases jumped more than fivefold in recent years. Antimicrobial resistance occurs when germs, such as bacteria and fungi, gain the power to fight off the drugs designed to kill them. The misuse of antibiotics was a big reason for the rise. Unfinished or unnecessary, and I just gave you examples of both of them, prescriptions that didn't kill the germs made them stronger. If it doesn't kill you, it will make you stronger, right? It's like Superman, and you give him kryptonite, and he eats a little bit of it, and it hurts him for a week, and then comes back 10 times as strong. Okay, I've got a dog that I call, his name is Sheila, and I call him She-Lex Luthor, and he is the destroyer of Superman, because until that guy stops being woke, that's my hero. I just call him that. I say, there's the destroyer of Superman. Someday Superman isn't going to be woke anymore, and I'll take away that title. But She-Lex Luthor is the destroyer of Superman. Make sure you take your antibiotics. In recent years, the CDC has drawn attention to nightmare bacteria resistant to a wide range of antibiotics. That includes carbapenems, a class of antibiotics considered a last resort for treatment of serious infections. Okay. If you have to take that, you have no more resort. And if it doesn't work, you are going to die, and the infection in you will now have to be burned. You will not get a burial. You will be incinerated, whether you want it or not, because there is a point where these things must be destroyed. Okay, so keep that in mind. Epoch Times, Dr. Ben Carson joins Trump administration to help carry out Maha agenda. Good, great brain, wonderful, wonderful person. He's a Seventh-day Adventist. We got to let that go. I don't follow people because of their religious preference. I support him because he is a great mind that is able to make an effective change. Zero Hedge, study links sugary drinks to colorectal cancer spreading elsewhere in the body. Sugary drinks. WhiteHouse.gov, fact sheet. Evidence suggests link between acetaminophen, autism. Okay, you all knew that. Zero Hedge, MSM forgets they've been warning about Tylenol and pregnancy for over a decade. They went and found all of the old articles where MSM has been having these doctors come on and, oh, don't do this, but all of a sudden when Trump said it, they all came against him like lions, right? And now all that's coming back in their face. From TJV News, pregnant leftists' Trump derangement syndrome leads to fatal Tylenol overdose. She wanted to prove that she could take all the Tylenol and not hurt her baby. Well, guess what? She punched her ticket and the baby probably died with her. I didn't read the article. I just took the title. Morality. Zero Hedge. Texas Governor Abbott signs transgender bathroom bill into law. Can you imagine that we have to have somebody sign these things into law? That you're actually a guy and you're not allowed to use girls' bathrooms? This is the world we're living in. I'm not going to read the article because I'm so upset just looking at it. It's a good article, but I will say the fines, entities that fail to abide by the law face a $25,000 fine for the first violation, then $125,000 for the second and subsequent violations. Good. These people need to be just completely taken out of their element, completely. Just get rid of them. And I don't mean get rid of. I mean get rid of them out of society as far as being able to spend money. Just keep taking it from them until they learn their lesson. Life News. I can just see that. You say get rid of them, and people in the world that are like, hey, you said to kill them. No. Okay. Anyway, Life News. Abortion pill kills woman, causes sepsis that took her life. Breitbart, #1 demographic celebrating Charlie Kirk's murder is teachers and professors. #1 demographic. Yep. Totally infiltrated in the education of the United States of America. Breitbart, the Los Angeles Unified School District, is banning a celebrated series of fifth grade musical plays about American history at a local charter school because the district says they are culturally insensitive. Can't have, Benjamin Franklin in a play anymore, right? Breitbart, Vermont Christian school reinstated after being banned for refusing to compete against trans athlete. Good. Fox, California high school girls volleyball team with trans athlete sees 8th forfeit amid growing controversy. 3 current and former teammates have filed lawsuit against the school district over locker room sharing. They're forcing these girls to go to a locker room with a guy. The Post-Millennial. Fairfax schools accused of allowing biological male student into girls' locker room who allegedly watched them change. What do you think they're doing in there? You think they want to be a girl? They're just as guy as they'll always be. They want to check out the chicks. That's all they want to do. Other news. Zero Hedge. Educational crisis. Baltimore High School fails to produce a single proficient math student in 4 straight years. President Trump's executive order earlier this year to dismantle the Department of Education comes as the president highlighted a disturbing and inconvenient truth about Baltimore City's Democrat Party-run failure factory school system. 40% of public high schools have 0 students proficient in math. 40% of them. A report by Pabst released this past week may catch the White House's attention. Pabst spoke with Carl Stokes, a former Baltimore City Council member and charter school operator who was visibly frustrated when asked about the fact that for the 4th consecutive year, not a single student tested proficient in math at Achievement Academy. Achievement Academy. And they have no achievement in Northeast Baltimore. City Schools on its website defines Achievement Academy as an alternative placement school for students who struggle in traditional academic settings. Well, I'd say they're still struggling. The school's vision, according to its website, is to cultivate lifelong learners and productive citizens. And the school gets a lot of taxpayer money to achieve that vision. According to state data, in 2021, Achievement Academy received $20,014 for each one of its 372 students. By 2024, because they were doing so well, Achievement Academy had an enrollment of 202 and received $42,618 per student. In other words, over those 4 school years, Achievement Academy's per student funding more than doubled, and not one student over those years tested proficient on the state math exams. For nearly 8 years, Zero Hedge has followed Pabst's investigative work through the trenches of school to school across Baltimore City. Pabst has conducted all the investigative work through Project Baltimore in collaboration with Fox 45. He has spent years reporting on optically displeasing headlines that merely expose how progressive elites running the school system have effectively robbed multiple generations of children of a future for short-term gain to line their pockets and possibly funnel taxpayer funds into the Democrat Party machine, which is nothing more than corrupt unions. Energy.gov. Energy Department returns $13 billion in unobligated wasteful spending to the American taxpayers. Good. Zero Hedge. German mayoral election turns into farce as AfD candidate banned. Only 29% of voters participate. They said, well, we don't want this party, the one that everybody wants, right? They're banning them because they know they can't win against them and they're conservative. And so they ban them and then nobody wants to vote. 29% of the people showed up. Germany's left have long claimed that the AfD is a threat to democracy. It's all projection with these people. And due to this claim, they argue the party should be banned entirely. Although banning parties is typically reserved for authoritarian regimes, this outcome remains a very real possibility in Germany, and a local election in the city of Ludwigshafen just showed what such an outcome could look like in practice. Incredibly, the main candidate for the AfD, Joachim Paul, was banned from running in the mayoral election. He's the main candidate. The method used to ban him could become widespread and now represent, despite what the left claims, the true threat to democracy in Germany. Using an expert opinion from the powerful domestic spy agency, the Federal Office for Protection of the Constitution, commissioned by Social Democrat-led Interior Minister of Rhineland-Palatinate, Paul was banned through the courts. So what they did is basically what they tried to do to Trump. They get some specialist in the spook field to say this is a threat to our society. And then they say, well, we can ban him then, even though it's just some lefty in that spook society. And that's what they tried to do with Trump, except they knew they couldn't directly ban him, so they just brought lawfare against him for the past 4 years. right? Didn't work, but they tried. It was a backdoor method that 3 separate courts upheld, and numerous appeals by the AFD's lawyers. Notably, Paul was leading in the polls before he was removed entirely from the ballot. He's winning. We got to get him out. Okay, they hire one of their operatives and say he's a threat to the society. Nobody replaced him on the ballot either, meaning the AFD was not represented by anyone in the election. Now the turnout in the mayoral election has reached an all-time low of just 29.3%. In 2017's mayoral election in Ludwigshafen, the then SPD candidate, Jutta Steinruck, won with 60.2% participation. So we went from 60% down to 29% because nobody wants to vote because the people they want to vote for can't run. That means voter turnout was cut in half from that election. That is not all. For those who did vote, many of them appear to have submitted spoiled ballots. A record high number of ballots were ruled invalid at 9.2%. So take that off and you're down to 20% of actually people voting. 8 years ago, that number was just 2.6%. They've had enough. Germans are just tired of it. DNYUZ, there are more robots working in China than the rest of the world combined. Yeah, China is making and installing factory robots at a far greater pace than any other country, with the U.S. a distant third, further strengthening China's already dominant global role in manufacturing. There were more than 2 million robots working in Chinese factories last year. Factories in China installed nearly 300,000 new robots last year alone, more than the rest of the world combined. American factories installed 34,000. 300,000. There's a little disparity there. While Chinese factories have been using more robots, they have also gotten better at making them. Obviously, you make 1,000 things and you find out what doesn't work, and then you make better ones, right? The government has used public capital and policy directives to spur Chinese companies to become leaders in robotics and other advanced technologies like semiconductors and AI. Worldwide, robots and AI are playing an increasingly prominent and disruptive role in manufacturing. Factory robots range from machines that weld car parts together to claws that lift boxes onto conveyor belts. As tech helps factories become more efficient, some are making do with fewer workers and altering the roles of others. It's, you got to go one way or another. Either you say we're going to go robotic and we're going to lose people, or we're not going to go robotic and you're going to lose the game altogether. You decide. ABC. Trump signs memo calling for crackdown on alleged organized political violence. I know you're aware of this, but it's so great I had to add it. He said it was meant to tackle what he claimed was a rise in bad people and anarchists on the left and the groups he said funded them. The memo instructs the JTF, the DOJ, the DHS, and the DOT, along with the DDT, to come up with a strategy to investigate, prosecute, and disrupt entities and individuals engaged in acts of political violence and intimidation designed to suppress lawful political activity or obstruct the rule of law. The memo says the Attorney General's office will provide guidance on domestic terrorist acts. We had some just last night, which the memo described as organized doxing campaigns, swatting, rioting, looting, trespass, assault, destruction of property, thefts of violence, and civil disorder. The guidance shall also include an identification of any behaviors, fact patterns, recurrent motivations, or other indicia common to organizations and entities that coordinate these acts in order to direct efforts to identify and prevent potential violent activity, the memo says. In other words, go get George Soros. That's what that last part means. Last night, I don't know if you heard, but they had some cars surround some federal agents, and the federal agents had to shoot back, right? This is getting serious. The Hill. DOJ official pushes U.S. attorneys to probe Soros Foundation. The Justice Department is pushing for investigations into the George Soros-funded Open Society Foundations, the first such case since White House leaders threatened criminal actions against nonprofits in the wake of Charlie Kirk's death. Soros has given billions to left-leaning causes over the last several decades, making him a long-time target of the right. They put out their sheet on him, 100 pages long. And their response was, we haven't done anything wrong. Zero Hedge. Porsche hits brakes on EV ambitions. Suffers another guidance cut as shares drop most on record. Nobody wants it. Nobody wants it. Futurism. Using AI increases unethical behavior, study finds. Using AI creates a convenient moral distance between people and their actions. We got a friend that's on AI all the time. Have you noticed how immoral he's gotten? Kidding, of course. I'm kidding. Breitbart. Trump's DHS oversees 2 million illegals deported from the United States. Down 2 million now. BBC. Colombia's president calls U.S. attacks on alleged drug boats an act of tyranny. Well, not when you designate them a terrorist organization. Once you've done that, the door is open, folks. Investing. U.S. economy rebounds. GDP surpasses forecasts with a 3.8% growth. Who is the only president to not have an annual 3.0 or higher rate? No, actually, it was Obama. He never had a 3.0 year. Now, what he did, and they will use this from time to time, and you can stand against them when you hear it, is that Biden may have later, I don't know, but I know that Obama was the only one in history at the time who did not meet 3%. Okay, you will hear about Obama's presidency when that is brought up. Somebody will say that he had the largest quarterly increases in history. How do you counter that? Does anybody know how you counter that?
The next quarters were horrible.
It doesn't matter. How do you counter that? Because that's what they're asking you. No, it was cash for clunkers. They bought all of those cars. Remember when they did that? The federal government made it go up. It had nothing to do with private industry. Yes. Cash for clunkers. They spent billions of dollars buying junk so that people could go out and buy another car, all at U.S. government expense. Wow. That's why that happened. Remember that. From Army.mil, National Guard exceeds. Well, that can't be. They said it would never happen. This isn't right. National Guard exceeds fiscal year 2025 recruiting goals. That's got to be wrong. Zero Hedge. About half of U.S. college students say socialism is better than capitalism. This is the country that we have made. That's why we need to get rid of the DOE pronto. Yes. Breitbart. Trump defeats Newsom as California repeals electric truck mandate. We're going to stick on this. It's going to stand, and he beat him. It's no longer in effect. Okay, who said it? Freedom is lost gradually from an uninterested, uninformed, and uninvolved people.
Reagan.
No. Go back a couple years.
Nixon.
Go back farther.
Washington.
Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson. Okay. I got a Lesrick here for you. Let's see if you can figure out what he is talking about. Do you think AI's upright? It's not. And its owners are a part of the plot. It will lie, cheat, and fake. It is fraud, no mistake. Can we trust it? I think we cannot. Okay, you scheming little. Okay, got a couple of irony, and we are done. First one is, let's see here. Yeah, that's too bad. That's too bad. This is from One India. You know, they got these guys that go out into Iranian society and they say, you're not wearing a hijab, and they take the woman and put her in a white van and she disappears for 3 months. Yeah. They beat her for not wearing a hijab. This is the moral society of the world, right? Listen to this. Iran's hijab enforcer, a guy named Reza Segadi, is sentenced to 100 lashes and exile after he's caught in a same-sex scandal. Oh, yes. Okay, and this is not smart to do. If you ever do this, don't post it on Facebook, okay? If you ever do this, don't post it on Facebook. And don't post it on any other social media, okay? I just want you to remember that. Mail Online. California woman faces felony charges after she registered her dog to vote and posted the ballot on Facebook. Yes. Such is the world in which we live. So from Sarasota, Florida to Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, I'm Charlie Garrett, and that is your CG Prophecy Report for the week.